obviously you're all about the hunt and the chase. Another thing that I know you're about is the attention and the consumer behavior and where the attention goes. And I've been dying to ask you this question for
Reezy Resells. Follow the hustle.
You said when you were a young hustler doing lemonade stands that you would sit at the intersection and watch the eyeballs of people to see where you should put your signs. That's like website hotspot shit. How the fuck did you learn that at such a young age? 9 years old, and what was the precursor to that?
I don't know. That to me is no different than Beyonce waking up one morning when she's 4 and starting to sing. That was pure.
So the same skill that you used when you were at the baseball, trading baseball cards, watching how people looked at the table, then placing your higher dollar cards in those orders. That's the same skill, and you're just saying you have that innately, and there's 100%. No precursor to that.
Yes, that's right.
That's fucking amazing.
You know, it's really interesting. I did the National Baseball Card Convention in Chicago this last July, and D-Rock, you know, who, if you're listening, you know that David Rock, who has been filming me for 4 years, kind of nonstop. He was completely taken aback by the way I was setting up the table. It's just funny. I don't think he said this, but I remember thinking at the time, because he kind of looked at me, he like laughed or said something. And I remember thinking, like, man, this guy must be like laughing. Like, he watches me 1 minute before I take the stage to talk in front of 20,000 people. And I'm like kind of nonchalant. Yet this baseball card convention's about to open in 20 minutes. And the intensity of me moving around like this table to this box to, you know, we had the Gary V pat, like just like the sheer focus.
Right.
Yeah, it took me a long, you probably know this because you consume my content. It was a speech while I was talking that I like I was doing kind of my normal, I was a lemonade stand kid, baseball card thing. And it just kind of like, you know how your brain works, just remembered. I was like, wait a minute. Because I think I was thinking about like, I always think of myself as humble and in the dirt. And I was like, why didn't I have the humility to stand behind the table? Like, was I at 6 or 7? Did I think I was a big shot and like make Robbie Turnick and Marissa and Eric Godfrey stand by the table? And then that's what led me to like, what the fuck was I doing? Like, you know, like, what are you doing at that moment? And that's what it was. And yes, like, probably somewhere in the last half decade, I realized I've been chasing attention my whole life. And whether it was Tingley Lane in Edison, New Jersey, putting up a sign, or whether it's understanding that TikTok is now in its moment, it's been the same game.
Do you feel maybe that chasing your father's attention was part of developing that skill?
That's an interesting question. I don't know, but it's a really good question. You know, it's interesting. When I hear that question from you, it's so thoughtful and some on like psychology shit that it gets me pumped, and I'm trying to give it the respect of how good of a question it is. I don't want affirmation from individual people, but I love macro affirmation. So on a one-to-one basis, I haven't noticed me gravitate towards acceptance by an individual, which is back to like why high school worked or things of that nature. But I think the way I'm approaching myself, I want the world's affirmation, admiration, respect, you know, love, not my mom or dad or kids or It's kind of interesting. I think of that a lot. I think about my energy on a one-to-one basis versus what happens when the camera's on or when I'm on stage. I think about how cheering or booing is something I always recognize, not an individual person saying you're good, you're bad. I also, you know, wonder if, you know, that was so early too. I was really set. That was 82. That was like, I was 7. Like,
subconscious.
Definitely, potentially. Maybe, but it's funny. I don't feel like I've never over or under reacted to my mom or dad's individual praise or pushbacks.
Right. It's not like you hacked your dad's attention by working in the liquor store. You had to work in the liquor store.
I've always focused on beating my dad. Being a better businessman than my dad is a real energy. My dad,
because he respects that.
You have to also understand something that people don't realize, and I've said it recently. my dad was great at saying I love you. So and hugging me and being affectionate. He wasn't around a whole lot. He's quiet, but he also, even in the beginning when he was probably a little bit colder, more removed for me. Obviously, we built our relationship during going from 14 to 30. I think people look for that when their parents don't praise or show affection. I didn't have that issue with either parent, very luckily. So I don't think I gravitated towards it because I think I was getting physical and even verbal affirmation.
Right. So we both had, you know, not the best upbringings. You're an immigrant. I grew up super duper poor, neglected, abused, welfare, government healthcare, all that stuff. And I'm super thankful for it because it gave me a huge advantage. Because for one, being neglected, I learned to get attention and what to do with it. And because I never had anything, I could give a fuck less. I had nothing to lose. Anything was better than that. And I existed with my back against the wall. So I'm comfortable as shit with my back against the wall. But many people are not. Many adults in this world, you know, they don't want to take any risk. I tell them how to hustle and they're like, but what if? But what if? And I'm like, yo, if there's no what ifs, it's not even worth doing. You know what I mean? And so my question to you is, how can we raise our children to have that mentality, or I guess, can it be taught without being bad parents?
It can be taught easily without being bad parents. It's actually, I actually think, you know, listen, I had a great childhood in the fact that I think I had the blend of the two. You know, I don't come from the background that a lot of people come from, true poverty or true like abuse, whether mental, physical. So I think there's a lot of people similar to me that come from an energy that's darker than mine. I think my energy is more lighter by luck. You know, that's not me being better. That's me being a product of my circumstance. I think my chip on the shoulder is real because I also wasn't, I'm a byproduct of being super loved, but not being handed anything. And so I think the way to be a great parent is kind of what happened with me, which is you can love your child, you can shower them with praise when they deserve it.
No fifth place trophies.
You know where this is going. And so like I think the biggest issue for parents today is they create entitlement, and that's different than spoiling your kids. Like, for example, I'm happy to spoil my kids, but I verbally often I used to ask my daughter this weekend, you know, what are you going to do when I don't buy you this stuff? You know,
what'd she say?
She said, I don't know. I said, well, you're going to have to get a job. She's like, yeah. Right. You know, and now the key is when she is 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, every parent gets to decide when they cut their children off financially. I'm a big buyer and believer of cutting your children off financially to lead to happiness. What you're talking about is something else, which is even more important. How you get your kids to not care about other people's opinions is a tricky one, because as I've thought about it, I'm like, wait a minute, my parents, my dad more than my mom, but my dad also hit it, and I also wasn't around him as much. My mom genuinely didn't give a fuck about what people thought. Yeah.